how many additional hours I was putting in versus the average worker. If I was able to rewind that clock and go backwards, what I should have done better was delegate more, delegate faster, and spend more time growing my people, growing their skills, growing their confidence, investing in their growth in every single way so that they were able to do more, they were able to be more productive. And the other part is to remember that I was never going to get it all done. I wanted to talk about something that I have finished almost every episode of the Second in Command podcast with this question. And the question is, what would you tell your younger self that you know to be true today? So when I wrote my first book, Double Double, which I wrote 12 years ago now, I did in chapter 17, I wrote 58 letters to my younger self, but I never really got into depth about them. So I'd like to go into maybe the first 5 letters to my younger self today, and I'll talk about it a little bit. I'm actually going to read you some of the excerpts from the book, and then I'll just expand on each of the first 5. So on leaving 1-800-GOT-JUNK after nearly 7 years and being in the role of the chief operating officer when I was building the company, I really wanted the lessons that I'd learned to sink in. So over a period of the 3 months immediately following, I wrote for 20 minutes every day. I wrote lists, I mind mapped, I journaled, and I just wrote. And these 58 points, or today at least the first 5 points, are some of the key lessons that I learned about myself during that period on reflecting. And I still read my journal every few months to remind myself of these tips and to keep learning. And I hope they help you as well. I wish that I'd received this advice as letters from my future self back when I was only 16 years old as an entrepreneur starting out. It certainly would have been an easier ride. So lesson number 1, de-stress. De-stress daily and weekly. The residual stress builds up in me. I can feel it. The stress inside me definitely affects the team and me in negative ways. And I react differently when it's building up in me. So one of the things I noticed was that I tend to carry this stress. I tend to get wound up. I tend to get kind of hyper-focused on the business, but I don't necessarily think clearly. I tend to react instead of responding. So for me now, the ways that I de-stress or I slow down at the end of the day, I stop working at about 5 o'clock or 5:30. I try to get more frequent workout in. I try to do yoga. I try to go for morning walks. I try to get massages more regularly. And I just try to remind myself to get rid of that residual stress that's building up in me so that I can think clearer, act clearer, and respond much more than I react. But it's being mindful of the fact that I'm building up that stress inside of me that has helped, and then being mindful that I need to actually de-stress as well. I also used to de-stress in very unhealthy ways. I was drinking a lot, always stopped at a bottle of wine, but I was pretty much drinking a bottle of wine every day. I haven't had a drink now in 6.5 months because I was de-stressing in a very unhealthy way. Or I would de-stress by using substances as a way to detach. But, smoking pot or using some substance as a way to de-stress wasn't de-stressing in a healthy way. And now I try to use healthy ways instead. Number 2, slow down and do less. I'm way more effective when I work at about 80% of the manic speed I can get myself up to. If I booked fewer meetings back to back, if I used buffer time, if I spent more time in one-on-one interactions, I'd be much more productive. My intuitive leadership style is more effective when I'm not rushing around. I used to feel that productivity was based on how much I could get done, and I used to try to fill every single gap in my calendar. What ended up happening was I was very, very busy during the day. I was rushing from meeting to meeting. I was rushing from project to project, but I never had time to be intentional. I never had time to be strategic. I never had time to kind of let my intuition kick in. And I was just rushing through things. I even used to have my assistant meet me outside of every meeting and walk with me to the next meeting to brief me on things that had happened in between meetings so that I would get more done. The reality was I might have been getting more done, but I wasn't often getting the right stuff done. So by slowing down and doing less, I end up delegating more. I end up growing my people more. I end up being more thoughtful in every interaction, and I'm probably much more impactful as well. Now what I try to do is 2 days a week, I try to stack my work together but give half-hour breaks in between those. I try to have buffer days in place, and I also try to never schedule more than 5 hours of calls in an 8-hour workday. So slowing down and doing less. Number 3, don't react. I move too fast without thinking about the ripple effects of my actions or words. I make decisions too quickly without thinking about the effects on other departments or even ready for the large initiatives to happen. People think I'm shooting from the hip, even when I'm not. I need to stop and try to clearly think about what I'm going to say before I say it. This was a really interesting one for me. that it's about responding versus reacting. It's about taking pause to really consider the question or the statement that somebody is making or the idea that someone's contributing so that I can actually let it sink in. One of the things that I've learned is that as an expressive, right, I'm a dominant expressive, I'm a very high I, I'm a quick start in the Kolbe profile, is if I sit on my hands, it prevents me from talking too quickly. I also try, if I'm in a meeting situation, to let the more junior and newer people to speak first, which allows me to consider my thoughts. It allows me to also let them consider their thoughts and speak first. And often the ideas they have are either better than the ones I have or good enough that I don't even need to contribute at all. So by not reacting and responding, by taking pause and by being a little bit more strategic, it's allowing me not to be calculated, but probably to consider that my ideas are being accepted better and that I'm not just throwing something out there quickly. I also learned that when I tend to react to a situation, my comments would cause ripple effects inside the organization, either good ripple effects or bad ripple effects. But kind of like dropping a boulder into a pond, there's going to be ripples. I had to remember that my ripple effects could either be positive or negative, but every interaction, every comment, every reaction, or every response could leave the organization in a better way or a worse way. And by taking pause and slowing down so that I could respond versus reacting, I was able to leave the organization in a better situation after every interaction I was having. Boundaries. This is number 4. Set them. I never did. I can't be all things to all people. I can't work 60-hour work weeks and be productive. I have to learn how to say no versus taking everything on that others could easily do or that we could delay until another time. I can't cover for people. I tried covering for people's mental health issues, people who wanted to have more balance in their lives, people who didn't work as efficiently as etc. And I used to take a lot of their workload on, solve a lot of their problems for them, even manage some of the people and projects for them, and they ended up having more balance than I did. I would handle conflict situations that other people should have dealt with on their own. I worked overtime when team members couldn't sell or didn't want to work nights at social events with suppliers or franchise partners. I have to stop checking email at night and just do all my work during the work hours of the day instead of working 2 jobs worth of hours. It was incredible to me when I took some retrospect and looked back at building 1-800-GOT-JUNK and even the 3 companies prior to that, how many additional hours I was putting in versus the average worker. If I was able to rewind that clock and go backwards, what I should have done better was delegate more, delegate faster, and spend more time growing my people, growing their skills, growing their confidence, investing in their growth in every single way so that they were able to do more, they were able to be more productive. And the other part is to remember that I was never going to get it all done, right? In an 8-hour day, I should only get 8 hours of work done. I shouldn't be working 14 hours because the list was never going to get shorter. We were always going to keep growing the company, keep adding people, keep adding projects. So I wasn't really ever catching up. What I was doing was avoiding the pain in my relationships, the pain of not having enough friends around, the pain of not or disconnecting from my hobbies and passions. So now what I do is I set boundaries. I don't work on weekends. I don't work evenings. I don't work on Fridays. I don't set calls with clients outside of my normal work hours. I started to get very good when I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK at waking up in the morning, spending time with my kids, walking them to school, starting my workday at 8:30, and then ending my workday at 3 o'clock so I could walk to school, pick them up, be with them in their activities, maybe slide another hour of work in once they got home and they were kind of sliding into doing homework, but then stopping and being present at family dinner at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. By having those boundaries, those healthy boundaries, it allowed me to delegate more and to be more focused. It allowed me to work on the critical few things versus the important many. And then by saying no about working weekends, saying no about working Fridays, my coaching clients, the CEOs and COOs I worked with, started to realize that I was actually doing things that they aspired to as well, and I was able to help impact their lives. Number 5, mentor while you work. I watched 2 very senior team members mentoring people as they did their jobs. They would take their junior people into meetings and just let them watch them do their jobs. It was interesting to watch their team learn along the way. I used to just put my head down and work, but they were smarter, and they let their team watch them so their team could learn at the same time. It was easier for the mentor to delegate faster to the people who learned quicker. One of the best examples I had of this was a CFO that we brought into 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Her name was Trish Saltis. Trish was a fantastically strong CFO. Now, one of the days that I had a budgeting meeting with Trish, this was towards the end of my 6.5 years there as a COO at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Trish and I were to be meeting about the budget, and it was a normal weekly budgeting meeting as we were preparing to roll out the budget system-wide. And I sat down with Trish and she said, oh, by the way, this is Elaine. She's just started with us. She's not going to be saying much today. She probably won't even ask any questions, but eventually she'll be running budgeting. So we ran our half-hour meeting and Elaine really never said anything, and Trish and I worked through all the issues. Next week we sat down at the same time and Elaine was sitting there and Trish said, oh, Elaine might have a couple questions today. She might make a couple comments today, but she's really just going to be here observing. Week 3, the same situation happened. Week 4, I sat down and Elaine was there and I said, where's Trish? She said, oh, she's not coming. I run budgeting now. And I realized that what had happened was Trish didn't have to take time out of her day to train Elaine. Trish didn't waste time by running a meeting with me and then having to debrief with Elaine on the side later. She let Elaine ride shotgun with her. And that was something that, as good as I was at growing people, because I always invested in my people, I was always focused on growing their skills, growing their confidence, mentoring them in the 12 core modules that are even in my Invest in Your Leaders course today. But I was always stopping my work to grow them instead of actually continuing to do my work and let them ride shotgun, blind CCing them on emails, letting them listen in on phone calls, letting them sit in on the corner of meetings to watch me do work. I would have been much more effective in my job at having done that. I was glad I learned that lesson, but I wish I knew it more when I was actually there and building the company 1-800-GOT-JUNK. So those are the first 5 lessons in the chapter 17, Letters to My Younger Self, in my first book, Double Double. Hope you actually leverage those, share those with people. These are good lessons to actually share with your team as well, but there'll be more inside. Check out more to follow. So don't stop now. Click here. There's more great videos that you can keep learning from, and together we're unlocking amazing leadership lessons together.